And it's obviously a lot of movement now, like catchers moving the ball a bunch, right? Mm-hmm. At some point, where do you get to the point where there's too much or not enough? And I think this conversation always comes up. I mean, obviously, I think within the circle, everybody's got an understanding of what it is. But when you kind of look at the casual person watching a game and go, man, the catcher's moving so much, is there a point where you're like, that's too much? And is there a point where it's like, hey, we got to pick it up?
I think it just depends. I guess the answer is yes. I mean, I think there is a point where it's too much. I mean, the generation that I came up in, it was all about stick it, like do not move the ball. And so evolving to be able to try and teach that was a process for me, because you watch guys move the ball and you're like, how is he moving that much and how are they calling it a strike? And once umpires started getting graded, it's when it kind of took off. And once we were able to measure receiving is when it took off. And do I like how much guys have to move the ball? I don't know. I guess the old school part of me, no. But that doesn't matter, like, because what's getting strikes and what's, gaining runs, receiving, are techniques that are moving the ball more. Now it's about efficiency, and
really where the umpire doesn't really know how much you're moving it, because that one piece move kind of all blends together if you're doing it consistently.
Yeah, and the guys that do it well, like I mean, I feel sorry for umpires. It's not easy, obviously. It's something that I guess the catching world has taken advantage of. Is like we can trick them, for lack of a better way to describe it. We can trick the human behind us. And when you get into high school baseball and you have a CPA who's umping baseball games for because he loves baseball, like you can trick that guy. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong or that I love it or that it's whatever, but it is part of the game, and it's something that has evolved and something that has presented itself more, obviously, in the last 10 years. And it's one of those things where you kind of evolve with it, or you probably get passed by.
It's the job of the catcher to make it difficult for the umpire, right? And it's like, there's so many calls. I think of basketball, right? And like refereeing a basketball game is insanely difficult. Like, you've got these incredibly fast, athletic dudes. One guy's jumping up to go, the other guy's jumping up to contest, and it's happening so fast, right? And almost all of the calls in basketball are that way, right? There's not really like easy calls in basketball. In baseball, there's easy calls, right? And now, like, I think even, obviously not like it was easier back then to call balls and strikes. It's just the idea that now you have more velocity and you've got some better movers behind the plate that make it more difficult. So you kind of get that collision of the LeBron going up for the layup and KD's jumping up with him to defend him. And you're like, man, honestly, that happened so fast, I don't know. And that's part of the whole deal, right? Is to make that difficult for the umpires in that situation.
Yeah, and I think, you talk about basketball. I mean, it happens fast. Now you talk about baseball, and the guys are throwing 100 miles per hour. Like you said, the stuff's coming in harder. It has more movement, maybe. But understanding those angles and knowing where you can be more efficient, that's why it's so important, because you're trying to trick a human being, essentially. And again, I don't like that term, but it's really what's happening. And so the more efficient you can be, the better. And understanding, your setup and the angle you're set up and what the pitch shape is doing and where do I let it travel to and where am I moving it to and where's this umpire's line of sight and how do I manipulate that? Like, there's so many things that go into it. But at the end of the day, too, it's just about keeping strikes. And if you gain more out of that, cool. But like, let's keep strikes and work out from there.
I think that's another thing where even though we're making the move and, there is more movement to it, it's not really – we obviously get some pitches that are outside of the zone, but it's still that movement that allows us to just get the borderline pitches that are strikes and keep them strikes. And I think there's like a bad narrative on the idea that catchers are really trying to steal a lot of strikes as much as just trying to show consistency and really think – like I tell all the guys, like, if you see that K zone on TV, it's like if the ball were to just barely touch that thing, are we working that thing back to the middle and get that for a strike? I don't care about the one 4-6 inches off the plate. If he's obviously going to give it to you, sit out there and take it. But it is just the idea of creating more efficient, fluid movements that even keep the really freaking good pitches in the zone strikes, because our pitchers make really good pitches in the zone that we don't get a lot of the time.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it, is like, can we make it easy on the umpire to call strikes? Like, that's really what it comes down to. Like, can I make it easy that this guy knows every strike is a strike? And then from there, can we just cut on the edges a little bit and maybe we extend it out a quarter of an inch?